Hi, it's March 29th, and this is your daily devotion. So happy spring break to some of you, and happy spring to all of us, as it seems like maybe we're going to leave winter behind finally. I am sitting in an area that is Olivia's rock house. You can't see too much of it. It's, just basically a pile of big rocks with littler rocks that make wonderful make-believe furniture, books, everything. We can turn this rock house into so many things, which really has nothing to do with my devotion, well, except maybe that I do truly love Olivia with all of my heart, and by that, as John pointed out in the sermon, that's not just an emotional thing. It impacts the way I live and where I come from, and that's what the devotion is about, is coming from the center of your being, coming from your heart, which really means more than just, as he pointed out, emotions, your cardia, where your life force is, and where it flows out from. And so I have a few scripture readings that touch at that. The center of our being as we are created is to be God. That's our connection. That's where we come from, and where hopefully we reconnect in our human selves. Proverbs 3:5 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight," or sometimes understanding is translated. Mark 12:30, and this is also repeated in Matthew and Luke, when Jesus is asked, "What's the greatest commandment?" And he said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength." So, the gospel writers are trying to get at that, get your whole self. And then John has a couple that I pulled out about heart. No one has ever seen God. It is only the Son who is close to the Father's heart, close to the center of the being of the source, the divine being, God, who has made him known. And then John 7:38, "And let one who believes in me," says Jesus, this is turning it around to us, "as the scripture has said, out of the believer's heart, out of your being, out of who you are, whose you are, shall flow rivers of living water." Well, a lot of metaphors there, but strangely, as we've been talking about dancing with all your heart, I've been reminded of a chemistry professor, of all things, that I had when I went to Tech, a big engineering school, and so a lot of really hard science teachers. And we had one teacher that Timothy and I were both in the class with, Dr. Klein. He taught organic chemistry, which was notoriously one of the hardest classes we were going to have to take. We were both chemistry minors. We weren't chemistry majors, and we were taking the minimum amount of the hard chemistry to get by. And so Dr. Klein saw us trying really hard, and when it came to the lab, which was my favorite part, we tried even harder, and we weren't getting A's, but I think I managed to get out there with a B, but that's neither here nor there. Dr. Klein saw in us somehow somebody that maybe could be turned on to chemistry the way that he was, and interestingly enough, he really was. The center of his being was chemistry, and he wanted everyone that he could to be a part of that, to have rivers of chemistry flowing from their hearts, shall we say. when the first day of class, he stood up in front of us and he said, I want to tell you a story about the great actress and singer, Carol Channing. Now, she was from way back, so y'all have to look her up. She did Hello, Dolly. But he said she, just gave her all in all she did. And she said that for her, acting was like having babies. And it was all that she wanted to do. It was all she was about. It was just, gave her meaning. And so did having babies was, something that she could compare it to, because that was also something that was wonderful to her. Acting is like having babies. And he said, so that's how chemistry is for me. This is like Carol Channing having babies. He was trying to get something across to us about that chemistry came from the center of his being. And that was an interesting introduction on the first day to organic chemistry. Toward the end of that class, he saw Timothy and I in the grocery store and tried very hard to convince us to take the next level of chemistry, which was going to be harder and which we did not have to do, and which would have really been an entrance into changing our major, and neither one were ready to do that. But we did at least hear him out. He was so sincerely coming from that place that formed him. And I think, that's what this is saying. If you are Christ's follower, if you are God's child, if you are living the life that God calls us to live, when we do this, when we live this way from all of our heart, from the center of our being, that impacts everything. That impacts our motivation. That impacts where we come from. That impacts where we're going. That gives us energy, like Carol Channing having babies, or acting, or Dr. Klein doing and teaching chemistry. It's who we are, and who we are is God's. And who God would have us to be is to be all that we are, with all of our particular individual preferences and strengths and weaknesses, but to come from the place of God within us, of Christ forming and informing and transforming us to be who we are meant to be, and to be connected to God like Jesus, who is close to the Father's heart and makes him known, or like believers for whom out of our hearts shall flow streams of living water, of life-giving sustenance. That's pretty cool. That's dancing with all your heart. Dancing with Jesus from the center of your being. I pray you have a day of dancing, maybe a whole week. Have a great day.